is going on out there, friends? And thanks again for joining us here on Expanded Perspectives. That's right, you found it. And thanks to everybody that joined us on the live stream. All of our live stream friends, thank y'all so much.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That's right. It's me. It's Cam. And, of course, you've heard the voice of freedom. The voice of freedom rings sitting beside me.
I'm here, man, live in the flesh.
The man that survived Corona.
I think it's a real possibility. The more and more I go on, the more and more articles I read on it. In fact, my friend and friend of the show, Micah Hanks, was texting me some articles over the weekend. And in those articles, they were talking about it probably being here since November of 2019. Lots of people getting sick or not feeling good for like 14 days. They probably had, the coronavirus.
The Rona.
Just didn't know about it. They weren't testing for the Rona. So,
all jokes aside, like I can't remember whenever we discussed it on the show, if they said they allegedly tested you for it.
I don't think they did. I know for a fact they tested me for the flu.
And I mean, even then, we find out that there was really no test for it. So
right, well, the flu, right? If they test you for the flu, it won't show up the coronavirus. That's correct.
So there's a good chance because remember they could never tell you where it came from.
They never had a good answer. That was my concern. Is when I was like, how are you walking around, working, hunting, doing day-to-day life, and then and like 48 hours later, I have double pneumonia and a blood infection. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
And they didn't really have a good explanation. I said, well, did I catch it hunting? Because I was up in the mountains and it was cold. And they're like, well, you didn't really catch it from just getting cold. And they just never really had a good answer for me.
Yeah, like I told everybody. And I didn't get it. I was kissing him on the mouth goodnight every night.
Right.
When I tucked him in.
And then nobody in my household got sick either. But yeah, man, the live stream it was pretty good. I'll be honest.
I had a great time.
I was nervous because I was like, oh boy, we're getting into something new we've never done before. I was confident that we could probably, the filming and stuff, we could pull that off. But the worst thing ever is to like do a live stream and have like 13 people show up.
I fully expected there to be about 15 people.
Because we didn't hype it up very much. We mentioned it on the last show, but the last show only dropped like a day or two before we did it. And then the social media thing we put up was only like a day or two before. So it wasn't a long time. It wasn't like we were building it up for like 6 weeks. Like, don't forget, July 2nd, we're doing a live stream where you can, send your questions. It was a spur of the moment thing. And one of the reasons we kind of didn't promote it a lot is in case we screwed up. We only screwed up in front of a handful of people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, there was a lot of people. There was like 250 people in there live at one time. It fluctuates, but they were chatting it up. It was chatting so fast, I couldn't really keep up with it. So I appreciate everybody showing up for that.
And
I know we missed a lot of people's questions.
Oh, yeah.
But we are going to do it again in just a couple weeks. When we're going to start doing our wrap-ups. And then, we'll probably do a wrap-up for half the show, and the other half of the show we'll probably do Q&A like we did last time.
I fully expected it to last about 30 minutes and be about 15 to 18 people in there. And it lasted almost 2 hours.
Yeah, and like I said, we didn't get to hardly anybody's questions.
And I'm going to tell you straight up, I was nervous. It was a lot, and I was afraid I couldn't get it to work right. And I'm like, well, I didn't. I mean, it didn't start off right.
Right. The beginning was not
stupid. Yeah. And it took me about 3 or 4 minutes to finally get it going. But I think I got it figured out.
What made me feel so good is we're so insulated because when we record here in the studio, it's just me and Cam. There's no audience. So you do that for a while and you lose touch with the fact that there was people out there all over the world, not only listening, but enjoying. And you're like a part of their everyday life. And so when we did that live stream, when you were seeing the chats coming in from all over the world, it blew me away. Like I remember that whole rest of the day. I was like, I can't believe that.
I wish I had the ability. We were asked that question about a superpower, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, which superpower would you like to have? And we joked around about it, but I thought about it more. And after that, I wish I had the ability to get every one of the listeners that like the show. I wish I could snap my fingers and put them all like in a big area where we could all get together and talk like that. We could just basically do a show and have everybody there.
That would be cool.
But then of course one of us might end up with the Rona. So the reason we don't is now we're going to live stream it. So that's what it's going to be. It'll be us BSing, like Kyle said, about more stuff. And then we'll just be answering questions and talking.
Yeah. And if you missed it, you can go to YouTube, find the Expanded Perspectives channel on there, and you can rewatch it. So,
and if you've got questions you want to submit for the upcoming ones, or you think about them, just start sending them with like the header, like live stream question, or hey, I have a question, or something like that, and we'll start going through. We'll have Mary start grabbing them all and peeling them out, and then we'll start setting them aside so we can answer more questions from everybody.
Yeah, so it was a really...
Had a great time.
I did too. So if you missed that, go over there. If you just want to watch it again, go over to YouTube. And if you do go over to YouTube, just like with the regular podcast, please, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get those numbers up.
And if you haven't written a review, please go write us a review.
Yeah, on iTunes and
Please
stuff.
drop us a 5 stars. I used to tell everybody, tell me what you had for breakfast. You don't even have to say what you think. Just give us 5 stars and then write something on there. Write what you had for breakfast. Write what's your favorite game when you're hiding from the coronavirus, what you're playing, or give it a play on word for Corona. Like, what's your like we called the disc golf tournament the Corona Classic. Like, what have you come? Do something crazy like that so we can look in the time frame of when they were written. That'll be funny. But
yeah, because
do that
the
on
more
iTunes
reviews
or
you
wherever
get,
you get them, yeah,
because of the analytics on iTunes, the more reviews you get and stuff, it pops up in people's searches. So
yeah, keeps going. I've got something that's going to pop up in your search right now, Philly.
Let's hear it.
I'm jumping into this. A 7-foot tall upright canine was recently observed at the Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area in Kentucky.
Oh, yeah, man. There's a famous story that happened in the Land Between the Lakes there in Kentucky where like a band of dogmen was like invading and shaking their RV or whatever they were in.
Yeah.
I remember that. So there's a history of stuff going on in that area.
Going on down there. And like we said before, support Phantoms and Monsters and Law in any way y'all can, no matter what it takes. This man is a national treasure when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Hands down the best website if you're into cryptozoology.
Yeah. So he'd sent this to us, and he just posted this up, and I'm glad he did, because after reading it, this is amazing. He actually got this phone call. So it's one thing to get an email. It's another thing to actually get the phone call, and he gets to speak to the witness, ask the questions he wants. Listen to this. The witness, along with his mother and friend. It says on Saturday, March 28th, y'all, March 28th. Of 2020, the eyewitness, along with his mother and a friend, were at the Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area, and they were hiking in the area of Elk and Bison Prairie. They accessed one of the nearby trails that entered the woods. Now, before they reached the wooded area, the witness noticed a long, wide print in the ground. The print was not deep, but there was a distinct outline in which the witness was able to place both of the palms of his hands. So that's a pretty good sized little print.
Yeah.
It says the witness didn't have his phone with him, but he was able to get the attention of a ranger who was in the immediate area. The ranger looked at the print and acted puzzled by it. The witness asked if he had ever seen anything like this before, these prints. The ranger didn't answer, but kind of shrugged his shoulders. Oh, yeah, that's great. Now, the witness, his mother, and friend continued.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, right. When he just goes, I'm like, dude, come on now. So they kept walking, and after about 15 minutes, the witness says that he noticed a creature on the trail about 70 yards ahead of him. See, that's what that shrugging of the shoulders gets you. Get you out there with a dog man. Here's another reason not to leave your house. People in Kentucky, don't go walking with dog men. Stay in your house.
Right.
Says the trail was on a rise, so whatever this creature was, it was backlit by the horizon. And at first, the witness was sure that this was a quadruped, and it was a large coyote. But as he and his party stood and watched, the creature stood on back legs while looking in their direction. The witness described the beast as an upright canine that stood approximately 7 feet tall. The head was similar to that of a coyote, but much larger. The arms and legs were canine-like, but very muscular. The chest was broad, and its color was darker than a coyote. After 15 seconds or so, the beast turned and ran in the opposite direction at great speed. The witness's mother and friend ran back up the trail. The witness hesitated a bit, but then realized that the beast was so fast that it could easily double back and cut them off on the trail. He then ran towards his mother and friend. The witness called me back, me being Lon, the next day, and he said that he was going to attempt to go back and try to find the print and photograph it. And he goes on to say that if I obtain this photograph, I will add it to the post. And then he goes like what you're talking about, Kyle. What you're speaking about is referred to as the beast between the lakes.
Okay, yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
A famous story. I remember that. Check this out. This is pretty cool. It says, hey, guys. This was from a listener. In 2016, I saw what you guys are calling the Glimmer Man.
Word.
Except it wasn't the Glimmer Man. It was a Glimmer Woman. I live near Banff, Scotland. Not Banff, Alberta. Banff, Scotland. I was in the sitting room doing a crossword puzzle when movement caught my eye. I looked up and saw a figure walking past the sitting room window out in the garden. It was walking with its head bowed down, as if it were watching where it was going. But the thing is, I could see right through her. The figure was around normal height for a female, but a very, very slim-like appearance. It had no features, just a shape. It was like the thing in the movie Predator. You saw it move and saw the grass, or I saw it move and saw the grass and the hedge kind of rippling as the shape walked along. If it had stayed still, I probably never would have noticed it. I was absolutely gobsmacked. And that's from Allison. She says, by the way, just loving the shows. Thanks.
That sounds creepy as, but it's a female glimmer. It's a Glimmer Woman.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm down.
Yeah, it's very, very
strange.
strange.
Why, right? I mean, if you got one, why wouldn't you have the other?
Yeah.
So, okay. So that brings up so many questions when you're talking about a Glimmer Woman. So now we're getting into, is it, obviously it's not like we had discussed like a black project where people are using this.
Right. Like a
military or whatnot, where they're like using this camouflage and just testing it, because all the interactions that we are getting, like we've discussed, and like you had talked about with people are seeing them in the trees and all this, obviously that's not what it is. So it does make you wonder. And I've talked about this, or I thought about this more rather after we did the live stream, if this could be all Bigfoot, and the reason that this is how they blend. Like that glimmer that they have is them half in and half out.
Yeah, so you think this was like a female Sasquatch walking through this lady's garden?
Oh, I guess
in Scotland?
Yes, it could be. I mean, unless that, other than that, it's some sort of demonic entity. I mean, what else?
I have no idea.
Right? Or like we said, an alien. But when you see it always seems like the Glimmer Men or the Glimmer beings are a little bit more natural than they are. I don't know, like Alien. I think of Alien as like a sci-fi, a little bit more advanced than natural. Is that,
yeah, I know what you're saying.
More technology when you think about an alien entity as compared to a Bigfoot, which just feels more like a natural entity. If that, and of course, it doesn't make sense. I get it, but you kind of follow what I'm saying.
Well, and this is the first story I've heard of where it seemed like slim and slender. Yeah. Most of the accounts I've heard of is the thing is giant. I mean, huge. Looks like a bodybuilder.
Yes.
Even,
yeah.
Just right. Large in stature. Not in this case. So, I don't know. Spirit, ghost.
Yeah, no telling.
Something otherworldly.
I love them, and thanks for sending it in.
Yeah, if you have any sightings, continue to send them in.
Speaking of bodybuilder-esque, I've got you another one here, Brad. An 8-foot tall, aggressive Bigfoot in McClellanville, South Carolina.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Get a load of this. It says, hello. This is, again, coming from our buddy Lon. He says, I got your email off the internet. We live in McClellanville, South Carolina, near the high school. Okay, here we go. My wife and I were out back last evening moving lawn chairs and a table into the garage. There was enough light to see into the woods. It was raining steady when I heard a few grunt sounds come from those woods. I looked out the door and saw 2 hairy forms quickly walking through the trees about 100 feet away, which that is not very far. As I caught a glimpse of them, the biggest one turned, stopped walking, and stared at me. That's when I realized it was a Bigfoot. For a few seconds, it just stood there looking at me. The other Bigfoot kept walking. Then it shook its head and let out a grunt and took a few steps in my direction. I slammed the garage door and locked it behind me. My wife didn't see them and wondered why I was acting like I was. She still doesn't believe what I saw. The big one was very tall, I'd say over 8 foot, and huge. It was covered in ruddy brown hair and a dark-colored face. The other one was a few foot shorter. I don't think I'd ever been so scared. I've never seen anything like that in these woods or anywhere in this area, and we've lived here for 27 years, and I know these outdoors very well. I went back out this morning, but there were no footprints, even though it's muddy back there. All the rain may have covered up any tracks. Now, we had something bust a garage window a few months ago, and I had no idea who or what did it. Now I believe it was one of those Bigfoot. Wow. Thanks for reading the email, RS. Now, he goes on here to say that he writes that I called the witness after receiving this, and he had contacted a local Bigfoot group who was going out to investigate. And he goes on to say that he didn't have any additional information, but this is what he says. I live by the largest U.S. naval base on Earth and one of the largest shipyards. And one night, it says, driving down the interstate, I noticed driving in a parallel direction, it says, this was a spacecraft. Now, this is what's funny. This dude is kind of like linking it. To make it quick, this other person chimes in here like he is saying that, and this isn't the dude that originally submitted it, the RS. This isn't the dude that originally submitted. This is another guy that's talking about how he believes, I guess, that there might be more to do with Bigfoot and craft. It's kind of like, and we've heard that. I mean, we've had Nick on, we've talked about it. And a lot of people, they shy away from that, heavily shy away from the fact that Bigfoot and UFOs might be linked. I don't know. I mean, you hear stories like there's no way, and then you hear stories that maybe there are. Like, I don't know. I have no idea. But
I mean, I think it's possible. I've had that in my mind ever since, the Star Wars series with Chewbacca.
There you go.
They said that they modeled him after kind of like a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
And they talked about that. Well, who's to say that aliens have to look like these grays we've been described, or reptilians?
That's true.
I mean, they could look like anything. And a large ape evolved on this planet, like a mountain gorilla. Why couldn't something very similar, a hominid with hair all over it, evolve on another planet in another solar system with a sun similar, in the Goldilocks zone, as they call it, not too far away from their sun, not too close? I mean, this could happen, right?
Yeah,
why not?
No, of course.
That's what I think. It's silly when people start getting mad about one person's theory, like, oh, that's impossible. But yet then they're going to speculate like they know. I'm like, nobody knows what Sasquatch is. Nobody knows that.
Well, like we covered on the live stream is when we were talking, is until you bring a body and plop a body out there and then learn from that body how to find others, and then can legitly Nat Geo sneak your way in there, Doyle Moss photography style, and start taking awesome pictures and video of it and study these things in their natural phenomena, however, their natural environment, and how they interact socially. There's no way that you can speculate on anything. Right now, it's still just a tale that we tell people in stories. Like, we don't know, and people say they see them. There's so many sightings that it's to the point where you can't just dismiss it.
Yeah, I agree.
You can dismiss some, but you can't dismiss what is going on. And I think there's weirder things out there than we're willing to admit to.
Yeah, speaking of strange, check this out. We got another email from a guy named David. This one's pretty cool. I know people like these. It says, good evening. I'm David from Toronto, Canada. I hope things are going well for you despite these uncertain times. I've listened to your podcast on and off for the last couple of years through your YouTube channel, and I've really enjoyed the episodes I've heard. I noticed on your website that you invite folks to send you their personal experiences, so I thought I'd share one of mine. In the interest of full disclosure, I also sent this to David Politis of the Missing 411 fame for a potential inclusion in the mailbag segment that he does now on his own YouTube channel. So here's what happened. Tim, I think you're going to like this.
Lay it on me.
On March 29th, 2016, I headed out to the intersection of Bathurst and Bloor, which is an area close to downtown Toronto known as the Annex. I went there to check out some of my favorite haunts. Now, there's a movie theater. I used to go there that was formerly called the Bloor Cinema. It's now known as the Hot Docs Ted Rogers Cinema. Now, back in 2016, and for years before, there was this burger place called Acme Burgers beside the Bloor Cinema. Since moving to Toronto in the late 2000s, I used to go to Acme Burger quite a bit before checking out flicks at the Bloor Cinema. Now, I hadn't gone as frequently for the last few years prior to 2016. So, 2 weeks prior to March 29th, I had been in the area and had passed by Acme Burger. I can't remember exactly what sparked this idea, but as I was going by the place, I realized that I haven't eaten there in quite a while. I decided to treat myself for nostalgia's sake and had a burger and fries. I recall the meal being very delicious. Now back to March 29th. I was once again in the area. As I was walking by the Acme Burger, I noticed that it appeared to be closed down now. Disappointed, I walked up to the door to read the notice of closure. The place had been closed down due to the operators being in arrears in rent. Then I saw the date of the notice, July 13th, 2015. That Acme Burger location had apparently been closed down for 8 months, and yet I had eaten there just 2 weeks prior. I still recall the place being packed at the time I ate there, and the usual staff was present. The place had had some of the usual wear and tear you would expect of such an establishment, but it was maintained overall. Yet on March 29th, almost 8 months after the place had apparently closed, the facade and interior looked as if it hadn't been taken care of in a very long time. Indeed, it appeared how you would expect a place that had been closed down for that length of time to look. About a month later, I went to take some pictures of the location to keep some kind of record. Now, I've attached those pictures to this email. The Acme Burgers sign stayed over the entrance for a while. The following year, an A&W moved into that spot. I've shared this story with a few others, and the response is usually that I must have imagined having gone there, or that my last visit to the place had actually been much longer ago than 2 weeks prior to me discovering that the Acme Burger had closed. I suppose that may be possible, but the idea that I had eaten there a year prior, but was convinced that it had actually only been 2 weeks, seems far-fetched to me. Politis actually got back to me and suggested that I should have asked the neighboring businesses about Acme Burger to see if the place had opened up again temporarily, which I didn't think about doing at the time. Most of the above was written from the notes I jotted down in the night from March 29th so that I wouldn't forget any of the specifics. This experience was weird and unsettling enough that I was compelled to document it in some way. Thank you for your time. Best, David. And he actually did send some actual photographs.
That's awesome.
Of the burger. So this was like a time slip. Very similar to other time slip stories you've heard about. The guy, it's a favorite eatery of his. We all have them. He goes there and eats. Then he's in that area. I do that all the time with my job. If I'm in a particular area, I know days in advance, I'm going to stop by there and eat there.
Yeah, there's certain places I love it. That you just have to go.
Like there's this one sandwich shop up in Denton. And if I get a job, I'll go out of my way a few minutes just to go through there just so I can go stop and get one of those sandwiches.
Like when we go by Heim or we go by Torchy's.
Absolutely. Everybody does that. If I go through Jacksboro, I usually stop at Hurd's.
Oh,
you know what I mean? It's like a one-of-a-kind burger. If I go near that area, I plan that. That's where I'm going.
To make it happen. Yeah.
And so this guy, he loved these Acme burgers. So he went there, had a meal. A couple weeks later, he's like, I'm going to go back and have another one. And it's closed down. He's like, what? He's looking through it. It's all run down. He looks at the sign and the closure. It's been closed for over a year.
That's insane. Can you imagine? I can't imagine having that happen to me because you start really second guessing your sanity. And
absolutely.
Am I remembering things right?
But you would remember 2 weeks ago or over 8 months ago that you wouldn't get confused.
Yeah.
I don't know. Very interesting. I appreciate those stories. Thank you, David. I know that we talk about people always wanting time slip stories and, the internet doesn't have very much. So it's got to come from people like you. So thanks for sending that in. And if you have a story of your own you'd like to share with us, you know what to do, folks.
Yeah, right. Well, I would say let's take a quick break, but since we're not sticking that in there, we're just going to jump right into it. We're just going to keep rolling right into what we do. We're just, I guess we could throw a sound bite or something in there maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah, let's get into that segment.
All right, I'm going to jump into it then. We're just going to get right into this whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't, like I said before, I want to start doing more stuff on other states and start digging into other, I was doing other countries, and then I get to looking here in the U.S., and every state's got crazy stuff that goes on in it. And I don't even know where to go. I guess this was, I think it was due to watching, like I said, the HBO show, when you talked me into watching The Outsider.
Yeah.
And then during it they got a new documentary coming out about the Atlanta child murders, right? And so that's what made me think about Atlanta. And then we talked about, you and I are always discussing the first 48, and a lot of it takes place in Atlanta. So I was like, Georgia. And then I have cousins that live outside of Atlanta. They're in Georgia. So I got to looking around at Georgia. And I didn't realize. Now, of course, you remember me before talking. We talked about like the hellhounds or whatever it was, the black dogs, right?
Yep.
You remember the wog?
Yes.
You brought up the wog. Okay. Well, the wog actually has a lot of history in Georgia. Now, there is a place that they say that's northeast of Atlanta. There's a couple of cities called Statham and Winder. And anyhow, apparently there is what has been referred to by the natives of that country, of that land years ago, as a volcano. Of course, this is before they knew it was a volcano, right? But that's what they've kind of referred to it as. Now, get a load of this. They call it, now, just messing around, like I said, online, digging around, this article pops up and they start talking about, and like I said, the natives called it Nottarock. And Nottarock was the Creek Indians. And the Creek Indian, when you broke that word down into our language, or to them rather, even in it, the way they describe it is hell. So to the Nottarock Indians, to the Creek Indians, the Nottarock, or that area that I told you could be a volcano, was actually hell to them. And they believed that the devil lived there. And that devil they called Wog.
Okay.
So it could have been the black dog. It could have been one and the same. They also believe that there was, when people have studied this place and this whole area, that a lot of stuff had been going on. When I say a lot of stuff, I mean like for years, hundreds of years. They believe there's a possibility that this land, this Nottarock place, had been used for religious ceremonies. So it's a special place to the natives of the area. Some claim, and I've not seen the pictures, I would like to see some pictures, that there's actually a stone temple built there. But I'm sure, like when we talk about a stone temple, instantly I start thinking about like giant pyramid, big stuff. It could just be nothing more than look like a root cellar, but it could have still been a stone temple back in the day, just the way it was built. So this whole thing, so there was a fellow back in the day named Mr. Gossett, and he lived near Nottarock, all right?
Uh-huh.
And he just called it the mud hole. And so what ends up happening is he and his wife are out working one day and they're plowing the field around it. So it's kind of like in the middle of their property, right?
Right.
They're plowing around it, this whole deal. So they're working the fields like normal. And the story goes that they saw the sun started rising, they said, and there was a fog hanging over the swamp area there in the middle. So of course they're expecting, hey, look, when it gets sunny, it starts warming up, it's all going to go, right? This mist or whatever's hanging there is all going to burn off because it's what it does. But they said what ended up happening was it started getting denser, almost like a smoke, like real dense in that area. And about 9 o'clock that morning, Miss Gossett said that she saw what she described a great volume of smoke burst forth from that swamp. So she goes, she gets her husband who's running the plow, of course, and he's come back over here. So they get over there and they're looking around and they start hearing a rumbling sound that they thought was thunder. They said all at once, the surface of that mud hole, that swampy area, rose up into the air. Huh. And they said it appeared to rise so high and that it was so full of small particles that it blacked out the sun. And they said when it finally comes and it comes falling back, it's hot as it falls back onto them, all around the family, okay?
Okay.
So what does it sound like? It sounds like an explosion of like swamp gas. Like we're picturing when you read the account that it all happened in slow motion. That's not necessarily true, right? As it's smoking, it could be off-gassing, and then it just popped and blew mud. And you know that we always laugh. We call it the stinky turtle mud, like you've been at a tank or a river, and the mud smells like a turtle or because of all the decay at the bottom of the lake from the vegetation dying and falling in. Could have easily been what it was. So like I said, they go on and talk about the wog. So they had this stuff blowing in the air. They're like, oh God, it's the wog. Everything's going down. They said the wog would come out and would kill neighboring cattle and kill, pets and things in that area. Now it is said, and I didn't dig into this, but it is said that the Cherokee Indians and the Creeks would all perform sacrifices of their, like they would take them in combat, take slaves or take whatever of their victims of whoever they overran, whatever tribe they overthrew, they would take, and that they would sacrifice those prisoners to appease the wog And they believed that the Nada rock, all that bubbling coming out of that gaseous area there, was, if you let it go for too long, it would explode and it would release more evil. So they would kill the people and thinking that it was keeping the devil himself and the gases down, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, what they described, and I love the description of this one. You know, we've heard the description of the wog looking like a dog, looking like all different animals. This one's one of my favorite. It says it's, of course, jet black. All right. It has the head of a bear. It has 4 legs, and they're the size of a deer, and the back legs are shorter than the front. They said it had large teeth, a forked tongue, Philly, red eyes, and a long tail that would make a buzzing noise. So
What?
I can't even think what you could describe that would sound anything like what they're saying the wog is.
Yeah, I mean, what could it be?
There's right. What can you mistaken the wog for? Nothing.
Nothing from this planet.
Nothing. Exactly. Well, I did not know this about Georgia, but there's 24.8 million acres that is forest land in that state.
Wow.
It says of the 37 million acres that make up Georgia, 24.8 of it is forest land. Well, you think about it. When you go and start pulling up pictures, when I went and stayed in Georgia, I was in far northern Georgia. I lived up there for a month with some cousins. And I mean, like right on the border, almost into Tennessee. Like we would go to Chattanooga, we'd go do all that stuff. And I remember it was like mountainous, rolling hills and thick woods. And it was, a lot of it had not changed. And I believe I've told it on the show, is they were plantation houses there on this area where they lived, on this big ranch where my cousins, where they worked. Some of the trees in front of those plantation houses still had cannonballs in them. Like you could go and they were like historical markers, all this stuff. So there's a lot of history in Georgia and a lot of turmoil. You have to imagine, like we've discussed when we talked about any of the battle sites and when we've talked about the spirits or any of that stuff, is there was a lot of bloodshed took place in the state of Georgia. But there's also a lot of strange, cryptid, crazy creature sightings that take place in the state of Georgia. Have you ever heard of the Georgia Raptor?
No.
Now, you're going to love this. This is what went down. And it was written in by a fella named Phillips. And Phillips wrote, "This happened to me and my grandpa on a hunting trip in July of 2008. I don't see my grandpa very often, so I always take the chance to take trips with him. Grandpa is pretty much an outdoorsman and enjoys hunting and fishing and just being out in nature. Now, Grandpa and I were out in the woods, and it was around 3 to 3:30 on Friday, the 25th of July, 2008. I was 18 at the time. We were on my grandpa's land in Georgia, and it was a pretty place with a typical Georgia woodland and a few grassy plains. Now, we were walking on a little rocky road heading for a site where Grandpa often sees deer. And as normal, there's a lot of sounds going on at night in the woods, so we ignored most of them. Now, of course, you hear he says at night. What he means is, of course, it's just dark, right? In the woods, in the afternoon, you're trying to get set up. 3:30 is usually a good time, at least here in Texas, to go get in your stand or wherever you're going to hunt and start getting settled in. And he said they tried to remain quiet, of course, because they didn't want to scare anything. And he said, suddenly, you're going to love this, we heard an unusual noise that we had never heard before on all of our hunting trips. And Grandpa looked at me and listened. Then he raised his finger to the front of his mouth to show me that we shouldn't make any more movements. And I heard a lot of movement and more of the noise. Now, I can't really describe the sounds, but I sure can describe what I saw, even though it was getting pretty dark. Now, we just kept listening to the sounds, and as suddenly something came walking slowly out of the bushes and onto the road, maybe 150 yards in front of us. My eyes got really big, and at that moment I wasn't even scared. I was just amazed to see this creature. Now, we didn't move. And as crazy as it sounds, it looked just like a raptor from the Jurassic Park movies. I just froze because I thought things like that lived many 1,000 years ago. It had a long, stiff tail, walked on 2 feet, and had short arms. It looked lizard-like and had a huge claw on both of its feet and smaller claws on its arms. Now, since the creature appeared to us that it could run fast, we decided to just not move at all. It raised its head into the air, and it seemed like it was smelling the air. Now, I'm estimating its height at around 5 feet at the shoulders. After sniffing the air, it made these sounds again and turned around and ran off into the bushes. Now, Grandpa and I waited until we felt safe again and then quietly made our way back to the truck and drove home. In the truck, we talked to each other about what we had seen and decided not to tell Grandma because she would think we were crazy. Now, I never believed in stuff like ghosts and creatures and paranormal, and I still don't believe in ghosts, but since that encounter, I believe in creatures that science doesn't know about. And that's my story. As odd as it sounds, I know what I saw. So
Wow.
this fella saw a velociraptor in Georgia in the woods.
Yeah,
Now,
he talks about it hasn't been around for thousands of years, more like millions.
exactly. But what I'm laughing about is, look, you're 150 yards away from it, yet you know, and I'm not saying this to slight the fella, you know by the shape what you're seeing.
Yeah.
You know, like we had talked about whenever we were in Arizona, and I had seen that cow, and and it was, how many miles did we decide? 2 miles probably over there, whatever it was.
Yeah, I remember looking at it.
For a while as the sun was coming up. And I couldn't tell it was a cow till it got up and moved, right? I could just see the color, see the shape, but even through now if I'd have had maybe a super powerful spotting scope, you know, but I mean, even the binoculars I've got, you know, they're not weak powered, they're heavily powered. But at 150 yards, you would know the shape of a cow.
Yes.
You know the shape of a horse, you know the shape of a dog. But when you get to something that size and also that uniquely shaped, you're going to instantly know it. And I believe this dude saw something velociraptor-esque. Like how there's, you know, we've talked about the miniature dinosaurs that were seen all through Texas. We've seen a bunch of that. I can't imagine. There's no explanation for it. There's not like there's a pocket of them that have lived for millions and millions of years undetected in the Georgia woodlands.
There's no,
It's impossible. Like there's certain things that are possible and things, not that. That's not possible.
That's why I think sometimes, you know, something is teleported from the past into the future.
I feel like that they always talk about time's not linear. You know, it's not a linear timeline. It's cyclic. And I feel like that's what it is. Is like you said, it's like if you stacked CDs or like you talk about stacking records, if that's time, is instead of time being a line, imagine time makes a circle and makes another disc and all those discs are stacked. And then if you turn them like tumblers in a lock, you can line them up and things can pass through other sides. That's what it seems like. Now I've got you something else that is apparently a local legend in an area called Pine Mountain, Georgia. This is a 3-foot long creature known as Beaver Shark.
Wait a minute.
You heard, I know how much you love
This sounds
animals.
like an incredible movie on the Sci-Fi Channel.
I'm sure
Beaver Shark?
I'm sure they've probably made it, yes. They say, get a load of this, people have said that they have seen in the lakes of Callaway Gardens that this thing prefers deep water, and they think that it eats and feeds on turtles and fish. And they even go on to say, when I say they, it's just reports and whatnot, but that it's been known to bite little bites and take chunks out of children. I couldn't find anything other than the single report of Beaver Shark. They claim that it has the body of a shark and the head of a beaver. Yeah, you heard me right.
Are people just seeing like a strange, you know, just a large...
Or they're just making it up because apparently some of them said they were using it at like youth camps throughout the summer to make sure that they weren't like getting in the water when they wasn't supposed to.
That seems way more believable to me than a shark with the head of a beaver on it.
I'm with you. So like we said, we discussed the wog, we've discussed the beaver shark, we've discussed all this crazy stuff, but have you, and I know we've discussed it before, the Altamaha, I can never say it.
The what?
Altamaha River. The Altamaha River is near Brunswick, Georgia. And in that Altamaha River is the Altamaha, which, yeah, you heard me.
Say that 5 times.
Yeah. Yeah. So this thing, because I know how much you love lake monsters and river monsters.
Oh, here we go.
That's what this is. Now, people say it looks like if you were to blend a seal with a sturgeon and a crocodile. It's a 30-foot long lake monster, and it's often seen near the city of Darien. Yes, that's right, Darien. Now, apparently this city in Georgia was founded back in 17 1836, and that you can go back a ways and start finding sightings. Like there is a sighting that took place in April of 1830 by a schooner captain. And he said that he encountered it off the St. Simons Island below the mouth of the Altamaha River. And what he described was something he said was a 70-foot long, thick-bodied, as big around...
Thick.
Yeah,
what was it?
Thick. As big around as a barrel. He said it had a crocodilian head set upon a long neck, and that they were several reports for several days after he spotted it. There were several more reports of this giant Altamaha that they talked about seeing.
And this river, I mean, does it empty into the ocean or anything? Like what in the world?
They all empty into the ocean, Kyle.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, is it close to the sea? I don't know where this town is.
Oh, I'm sure. Sure.
So could it be something else that's made its way up?
Well, of course it could be something else.
I mean, how could you?
Yes.
It doesn't seem like... I can't imagine just fishing in my bass boat, say.
And seeing something like that?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
You'd be like, what in the hell is this thing?
What did you say it was? A cross between a crocodile, a sturgeon, and what else?
And a crocodile, a sturgeon, and a seal.
Yeah.
The Altamaha is what they called it.
Hey, come up with a better name, folks.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're trying to name cryptids, come up with a better name. Like Beaver Shark or whatever, that's cool.
That's a good
I like
name.
that. That's a great name.
That's a name. But the Altamaha doesn't help out in it. Yeah.
Spell that for me.
Yeah. No, I'm good.
Is it the
You'll have to look it up. The ha is actually ha, H-A.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah. Altamaha is like Altamaha.
Okay.
Hyphen ha is the creature. So is the creature's name just ha?
That's what I'm wondering.
Right? That's all they named it.
Or is it
ha.
Altamaha ha?
That's what they say it is, but is it just Altamaha ha?
All I can picture is like the ZZ Top music. LaGrange. Altamaha ha. No, Altamaha.
Yeah. Altamaha ha. Oh, yeah. Ha ha. Altamaha.
Oh, the air is hung.
That's right. That's it. 100%. Yeah. Well, there's more sightings. There was a fellow named Donnie Manning and his brother were fishing.
I know Nick Manning.
Here we go. Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah. So Donnie Manning, maybe his brother Nick. That's his brother Nick.
Yeah.
Is with Donnie back in 1969. Nick had something on his glasses. And he says he's got a place called Clark's Bluff. And that they saw this creature. Now, get a load. They, yet again, said that they thought it might be a sturgeon.
Yeah.
But upon closer inspection, they said it looked more like a gunmetal gray alligator on the top. Now get a look, and the bottom was oyster white and yellow with a crocodilian head and a horizontal tail like that of a dolphin.
What?
They said it was 12 feet long and had a bony triangular ridge stretching down its back as well as a dorsal fin. Now, I don't know about you, but that still sounds like a sturgeon.
I never really thought about that. The horizontal tail. We know like where a shark gets up and down.
Yeah. That's called vertical.
Yeah, exactly. I never really thought of it. I never even dawned on me to this instant that dolphins have different tails than sharks. I just never really thought about it. But as you're telling the story, I'm like looking at images in my mind. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a big difference.
Whales have that same dolphin tail too.
Yeah, you're right. You could just
mammals.
That's true. But this is an alligator, half catfish,
Seal.
half dolphin, seal. I mean,
now there is another man back in the 1970s named Harvey Blackman, and he said that he saw it after it ripped all of the fishing lines off all the rods he had baited and set out. And he said this thing was at least 20 foot long and had a snake-like head. And as it came through, it just gathered up all the bait and snapped off all the lines. Now, according to old Harvey, that it was big enough to leave a wake that caused the boats that were tied up to bob in the water. So it's not just like ripples, it's enough to make the boats move around. And the story says that one of the dudes that was there had a rifle and that he was going to go bust a few caps on it, and it got away. Of course, it just disappeared, right?
Yeah, that's the guy you need. You need old John Thick to get up there and start shooting.
That's Wick.
No. This guy's John Thick.
Well, there's another one from the 80s that said that there were two fellers down there fishing, and they were out there actually catfishing, and saw what they believed was this monster stranded up on a mud bank, I guess where maybe the river receded or it had chased something up there. And they were the ones that said it had flippers. They said it had 2 front flippers, but none on the back.
So the state of Georgia has multiple water creatures, is what you're telling me.
It's known as Alti, the Altamaha. Now
This one's name is the same thing?
Same thing. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Boy, this is confusing.
There's another fella that was a publisher there in the newspaper, a newspaper publisher named Larry Gwynn. And his story was that him and one of his buddies saw this thing swimming and leaving a wake while they were fishing at Smith Lake. So I guess it's breaking off the rivers and going up in the lakes.
Man, we know a guy named Robert who lives in Georgia.
We could always hit him up.
Suburb of Atlanta or Hotlanta. We need to go over there and maybe do some investigating.
Let's do it. We could go see Randall Carlson while we were there.
That's right. I forgot. He lives
while we're in
Atlanta.
Hotlanta, and then we could slide and see Robert and go look at the Altamaha.
Do some nice bass fishing.
Right? Yeah.
This quarantine would ever end.
Yeah. Sooner, one of these days.
I don't know what it is. And see, this is this. Everybody that listens to the show for a long time, they know that this is probably my least favorite cryptids are the ones that are in the water.
Yes.
And it doesn't make any logical sense because if you think about it, if there's any place for a real live monster to live, it's probably in the water. Yet those are the ones I dismiss. If it's on the land, I'm like, oh yeah, that seems real.
I believe they're there because it just helps build my story of why I don't want to get in the water.
Well, you're right. And so like, maybe I need to rethink about it. It's not like a guy that misidentified it. Maybe that's like an unknown fish that was spotted. I mean, you follow those Instagram pages. They pull stuff up like these Russian trollers and stuff from the depths of the ocean. And dude, these things are wild looking creatures. Nobody knows what these things are. They're not named.
Now imagine they're great big. They can get out of the net so they know it's coming. They're a little more intelligent than a bottom feeding fish that they drag up.
Yeah. So see, it's way more possible for there to be some unknown crazy looking creature that looks like a shark and a beaver together in the water.
Now there is one, as you were asking about if it touches into the water, that in the 1830s in a Savannah, Georgia newspaper, apparently where that Altamaha River dumps into the ocean itself, there was a sea captain, not in the river, but in the salt water. And he said that he saw a 70-foot long creature that according to him,
70 feet?
70 feet long. And of course it was talked about. People said it had humps. It's the same story that you get all the time. It's got a huge thick neck, a big thick tail. It's got flippers. It's the exact same stories that we get with all of these wacky sightings.
Yeah.
All of them, which, man, what makes it even more interesting is if you look into this stuff, folks, there's a place called Wolf Island, Georgia. And back in March of 2018, y'all remember, and we even did a news article about it, is whenever they had something that they couldn't identify washed up on one of those islands.
Yeah, that kind of stuff happens all the time. Stuff washes up.
Yeah. And if you remember too, they were talking about, well, maybe that's what it was. But we don't ever know because what do we talk about? Some of those whales or whatnot is they fall apart in the water and they it doesn't look like the natural, what you would think it looked like, right?
It doesn't look like what it looked like when it was living.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, they find bull sharks all the way up in Lake Michigan and stuff like that swim up the Illinois River or the Mississippi River. That's what I'm saying is, could this be some crazy looking creature that it's originated in the ocean, but it's made its way up that river?
I guess, well, of course. Yeah, of course it could. I don't see why it couldn't.
I mean, it's not something like a plesiosaur or something like that that's left over from the prehistoric time. It's just an unknown sea creature.
Yes.
I mean, and especially when people, if they're old accounts, they're like, oh, I saw the Kraken. That's what I think it is.
Dude, it could vary. Well, and anytime if it touches the ocean, how come it couldn't hide in either one, right?
That's what I think.
It could easily hide in there. Now, I've got you something here, too, you're going to like from Fannin County, Georgia. Listen to this tale.
Okay.
This tale right here goes, my wife and I had fallen on hard times, and we were living with her mom and her husband on Colwell Road. I grew up just 2 miles from there. I always loved going into the woods, and I still do today. Now, y'all with these crazy names up there in Georgia. Cohutta National Forest was my playground growing up. It was not unheard of for me to disappear for a few days in the woods. On the day in question, my wife, her mother, and I went shopping and were coming home on Highway 2. We were in my dad's F-150 with a brush guard in the front. It was very dark and foggy that night, with Jack's River on our left about 10 yards off the road. We were about 250 yards from Colwell, and there was a sharp curve to the right. When I took that curve, there was something in the road. It was on all fours. I had no choice but to hit it. When we connected, the truck went completely over it. We felt the thing go thunk over the animal. I stopped to make sure the animal was dead because I didn't want it to suffer, and I wanted to check on the truck. Now, the truck was okay, but when I looked back, this is very strange. So I got back into, now this is what's great. I looked back, and it was so strange that I got back in the truck, turned it around so I could point the headlights at it. He says, now goes on to say that this was the damnedest thing I had ever seen. It was black, but not the regular black. It was a black that absorbed the light, like no light was going past it. And I still couldn't make out the animal. Now, what I saw, or what I could make out, he said was about the size of like maybe a small bear, 200 to 250 pounds. Now, it was clearly dead. Its head was twisted back, and I believed it was turned back like it had broken its neck. He said the eyes were blue and glassy, like the way the eyes do when something dies. It had long curved claws, and its teeth were curved back and very sharp. Now, I didn't want to freak out my wife or the mom, so of course we went home. Now, the next morning, he said it's about 1.5 miles to 2 miles from where he hit it. He said the next morning I grabbed my 30-30 and my 357, and I go out to take a look, and it was gone. I mean, there was no blood and no fur. There was a little impression in the grass where it was lying that night, and it looked like something big had came and carried it back off into the woods, and I could see where something walked into the woods. So I went back to the truck, grabbed my day pack, and it said, and in it, he said, this is what he tells he has in it: a tarp, a wool blanket, a couple of quarts of water, a little bit of food, just enough stuff to make it a night or two in the woods. He said, just a real quick camping trip, not a real survival situation. He said, so I headed in the woods to track this thing down. Sounds like an awful idea. Now, I never saw a clear track, just sign. There was a broken stick here or there, leaves kicked over, rocks that might have been turned over, walking through, just the normal kind of stuff. I'd made it about 2 miles when I came to a field that was about half a football field in size. He says, right in the middle, it was filled with all this little brush and whatnot. So he goes on to say, I went over to this little area, and this is on the perimeter of the field, and he said there was no sign of it coming out, just going in. He said that I was kind of confused. So I gave up and started back to the truck. He says, now when I got to the edge of that field, I got a very, very bad gut feeling. Like I can't explain it really any other way. It was so bad that it almost doubled me over. So after a little bit of trying to kind of compose myself, I headed back to the truck again, but it was the same thing. Now I know about where I was in comparison to the roads in this area, so I headed back in the direction towards my friend's house, which is 5 miles away. I'd finally gotten out of the woods just before dark, and I finally made it to his house and told him what had happened, and he told me, don't ever go back in that field again. He said apparently, and this is what he found out, that was supposed to be cursed ground and a place where it's covered with dark magic, and that people have gone missing after going into those areas. Now, I don't know, he says, if this is true, and I don't know what I saw that night. And he goes on to say, but I do believe that there is something strange in those woods. And these woods are a part of me, and I can never stay out of there. And I'm not afraid of anything in those woods, but I would just want to be a little more careful if there's anything around there like a bear. But it doesn't sound like what he saw was a bear. So I jump over to this next one in Habersham County, Georgia. Now, this fella sends this. This fella's name's Mike P. And Mike P. writes, this is back in September of 2015. And it says, while driving home from an event with my fiance, it was already dark out and was raining when we hit the road that night. So I was driving and my fiance was in the passenger seat. We'd been on the road about 15 minutes at most when we got to a part of the road where I had noticed a rather large figure in the opposite lane on the two-way road. It seemed to be on all fours, was grayish in color. Now this thing was very quick, which was startling to us given these conditions. So I asked my fiancée if she had seen it, and she said yes, but seemed spooked about it. So I wanted to stop, but I couldn't because there was another car about 100 foot behind us. I also didn't look back because I wanted to stay focused on the road because of course, these poor conditions. And the fact that we were in the area we'd never been until that night. Now, I truly don't think it was a cow, because from what I saw, even with that little glimpse of it, it had hair more like a dog. Now, I would have to conclude that it might have been a dogman or a Bigfoot. I definitely wish I would have been able to go back and get a longer, better look at it, especially during the daytime, because it was within feet of my door. But because it happened so quickly and the fact that I was focused on the road instead of turning to look at it, I didn't see it super clear. So this fella thinks that he's passed or at least saw a dog man.
Right.
Now it goes back into what you and I discussed, the same thing that could have been what the first guy had seen is another dog man.
Yeah.
And there are Bigfoots. If you go and start researching, there are multiple sightings of big feets in Georgia.
Wow.
Georgia, because it's so eat up with this whole area as far as like woods. I'm going to give you one right here. This took place in January, right here, January 24th of 2019. This report was submitted by a Georgia investigator, Dan Maslick. And he sent this in to our buddy, of course, Lon. And Lon's got this and says that he says, Lon, you better take a look at this. There's definitely something going on here. 2 sightings in the same area in 1 week. So he gets into this. He says, I've hiked and hiked in these areas. So apparently it occurred within a 15-minute walk of the Appalachian Trail at Blood Mountain.
Oh, wow.
It says Bigfoot road crossing reported south of Blairsville in Union County, Georgia last Friday. A very nice retired couple called yesterday to report they clearly observed a brown Sasquatch lumber across Highway 129 on their way home from Gainesville at about 12:30 a.m. The husband said that it was only 50 feet ahead of them, and they both saw it in their headlights. They got a very clear look at it as it stepped across the highway and glanced back at them before stepping down the embankment. They were non-believers before, but were freaked out when they saw one for themselves. The second report was from February 1st of 2019, says here's the second sighting south of Blairsville, Georgia, only a short distance from the first. A woman contacted us to tell her daylight sighting at 11:45 a.m. 3 days after the first on 129. She was right here, heading north on 129 from Gainesville and was south of Vogel State Park. She said it was only 50 feet from her car and she got a very good look at it, that it was walking on 2 legs up a very steep, too steep for her to walk up, hillside to her right. She estimates its height at around 7 foot, maybe more, dark brown in color and very bulky with, and here we go again, a slightly pointed head. Its arms were much longer than a man's, and even though it was walking up a very steep embankment, it was taking very long strides. She said it reminded her of the Patterson-Gimlin figure as it walked. Though she said it had to know that she was right there, it never turned to look at her.
Huh.
So again, we've got dogmen, we've got Beaver Shark, we've got Altamaha, we've got the Wog, we've got Big Feets, we have everything. Georgia is eat up with all kinds
of crazy
cryptids. Yes.
Sorry if you hear me sniffling, folks. My allergies are off the mark today, man. It's killing me.
He's safe. He's already had the Rona, so he's good.
It's not Rona. I don't think Rona has anything to do with sniffling.
No,
just allergies.
No. Yeah. So,
well, man, that's crazy. I didn't know there was so much involved in Georgia. We might have to start exploring state by state. That's 49 more episodes.
I think we're going to have to.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, we need to dig into them to find these, like, there's a bunch of like little lake monsters. We've covered off and on, but never focused on individual states where you flesh out all the wild stuff in that one state. There's more. There's all kinds of Sasquatch sightings and all. Now I was hoping and I didn't find it. But I was hoping for little people sightings, little people in the woods, and was really looking forward to find. And I couldn't find any.
Really?
I didn't come across any just yet. So if y'all have any listening, anybody living in Georgia or anybody living anywhere, of course, with the little people, but especially if you're from Georgia and you've got some, send them this way. I'd like to read some.
Wow. I'm going to be working on the Elite show that's going to drop right after this on a bunch of not little people, but gnomes and like duende sightings. So
I love it. I love it.
It's going to be cool. In case you weren't around, we did our first ever live stream.
Yep.
Last weekend.
Killing the game.
I think it went off pretty well. Seemed like a lot of people showed up and really enjoyed that. And so, we're going to be planning on doing that again. But we're going to be on somebody else's live stream.
Yep.
This coming Sunday. So if this is going to be released on Friday, you're going to listen to this. So in 2 days, folks, Sunday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern, that's 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we're going to be on this, what are they calling it? The Paranormal Podcast Calypse live stream.
Yes.
And this is hosted by Derek Hayes of Monsters Among Us podcast and Shannon Grow of Into the Fray. And we're going to be on there, me and Cam, as well as David Flora from Blurry Photos and Mr. Bryce Johnson from the Bigfoot Collectors Club. Now, I'm not familiar with Bryce Johnson too much. I know you said he was on a television show.
Yeah, I saw that he was on. I think it's called Expedition Bigfoot. I think
something like that.
Yeah.
But we're going to be on there, and I think we're actually going to be talking about like Fey folk sightings.
Oh, I hope so.
And something like that. So that's what. So if you want to get on there and listen to another live broadcast there on Facebook, if you follow our Instagram page or me or Cam personally, or the show's Facebook page, it'll have all that posted, and I'm sure you'll be able to just link right through it. But if you have any sightings of your own, like Cam mentioned, and you want to share it with me and Cam, please send them to expandedperspectives@yahoo.com. You can follow us on all forms of social media. Cam, what do you got planned for the rest of the week or this weekend?
Well,
I know you can't go out and really do a whole lot.
Yeah. I'm just working on more stuff for the show, trying to get some more shows pumped out on YouTube, some more shows recorded, we got some stuff we're going to have to let y'all know about next week coming up that's going to be on the YouTube channel. I'm just trying to create more content while everybody's, kind of stuck and all that stuff. We're just trying to make sure we give them enough things to listen to, enough stuff to kind of help you pass the time.
That's right.
That's pretty much all I got going on. If you're not
familiar, if you didn't know that we had a YouTube channel, please go over there to YouTube, find us, subscribe, like it over there. You can help out the show by going to iTunes and writing a review.
Yep.
And giving us a rating. That would really help. What else, Cam? Trying to think of everything before we wrap up here. Please be careful, folks. Stay home if you can. Try not to go out. Be sure to wash your hands. Keep your social distancing, and let's all be safe and get through this thing. Till next time, Cam, unless you got anything?
No, I'm golden, baby.
All right, man. Till next time, I'm Kyle Filson. He's Cam Hale.
Peace, y'all.